Yesterday we were talking about the authenticity of the Mahayana teachings, and there was one part of something I read that I didn't go into because it wasn't something Venerable talked about, but it's something that I heard His Holiness talk about. I think he was teaching in Arizona in about 2008. There's some teachings I listened to on Shantideva. I'm pretty sure he taught it there, and I think I heard it another time. And this is a teaching from the Sakya tradition, the Lam Dre, which is the path and result. It's similar to our Lam Rim. This is a teaching that they have on the 4 authenticities. And this is a teaching that he personally has found helpful, and it is one that helps us to develop confidence in the Buddha's teachings and in the Dharma. And so these 4 are the authentic sutras of the Buddha, authentic commentaries, authentic teachers, and authentic experience. And so it's explained that if you look at the history of how things developed, the first authentic sutras came into being based on the Buddha teaching them. And then based on these authentic sutras, then authentic commentaries came into being. And these were written by people such as Nagarjuna and other great sages who tried to explain the final thought of the Buddha. So commentaries were composed. And then based on these authentic commentaries, authentic teachers who realized the different teachings in these commentaries and the sutras came into being, and mostly probably from the commentaries because the sutras can be hard to understand. So now you've got authentic sutras first coming into being, then authentic commentaries, then authentic teachers. And then on the basis of the teachings given by authentic teachers, then authentic spiritual realizations or experiences can grow in the heart of different practitioners. And so if you think about it, just historically, the Buddha came, he taught, we have the sutras, we have the commentaries, we have excellent teachers, and people generate realizations. So that's kind of in order of time how it goes. But if you look at in terms of a person's practice, in terms of me as an individual or you as an individual developing conviction in the Buddha's teaching, confidence in the Buddha's teaching, actually the sequence is completely reversed. So it starts with our own experience. And from our experience, which we generally learn from teachers, we infer that the teachers are authentic. And from that, we can infer that the commentaries are authentic. And from that, we can finally get to the place of inferring that the words of the Buddha are authentic. And so then His Holiness talked about his own, how this worked for him in his own mind, how it helped him to develop faith and confidence in the Buddha and the teachings of the Buddha. He calls it his modest experience. That seems modest. He was talking about how it had been valuable in his life and had brought him peace of mind. And this occurred because he heard things from teachers and also studied commentaries. If he hadn't studied the commentaries of Nagarjuna, hadn't heard teachings from great teachers, he never would have had these kind of experiences of peace of mind and any understandings that he has. So because of that, of course, naturally, from his own experience, he would admire the teachers that taught him these things and the commentaries and the teachings they were based upon. And for him, a lot of these were the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa and many of the other great practitioners. And from his own study, he's also generated great respect for Nagarjuna. And because of his own study of this teachings and experience, kind of really from his own experience based on his teachers and the study of these commentaries, he has great and tremendous respect for Nagarjuna and what Nagarjuna wrote. And Nagarjuna actually praises the Buddha very highly. When you read the text Fundamental Wisdom, there's a place where he makes like a praise I think he makes a praise at the more towards the beginning, paying homage to the Buddha because of the Buddha's great wisdom in terms of teaching the nature of reality, teaching this subtle kind of dependent origination. And then at the end of the text, he praises the Buddha again due to his compassion, seeing how it's the compassion that he has for all sentient beings. And that, so from his own experience, he's developed this kind of confidence, really. So he really then lays this out for us ordinary beings. This is the way I take this is, if you think about your own experience, we might not have had, we just have kind of more ordinary experiences. We maybe don't have great realizations at this point, extraordinary things, but we still have our own experiences. And so think about in your own practice, the teachings you reflected on that have made a big difference in your life. You have some experience. If you didn't have any experience of the teachings, it's unlikely you would continue to practice. It would just seem kind of pointless. So there's some level where we're having some experience. Maybe it's just things touching us in a beautiful way. Maybe when we hear the teachings on bodhicitta, it helps our heart to open, even if it's temporarily. Or maybe when we hear the teachings on wisdom and emptiness and dependent arising, it helps our mind to expand and be able to, understand how things are so interrelated. You have to look in your own mind. So these are our experiences, even if they aren't like full, even if we don't have a, spontaneous bodhicitta or we haven't directly realized emptiness, we have our own level of experience. So then based on that experience, we can also have an idea about the kind of realizations that we read about in biographies of spiritual practitioners. And also, some of us have teachers, and we have learned these things from our teachers, so it helps us to generate this kind of confidence in the teacher. And based on that, we can have confidence in the commentaries that they're relying on, and based on that, we can have confidence in the Buddha's words, the scriptures themselves. So even though we weren't, around at the time of the Buddha, we have this long, long, long lineage that we can rely on. And we need to rely on it in this way. So this way of reliance is it's actually a kind of inference, like what is inference? Inference is when you infer something, when you come to know something that you haven't actually directly seen. And one way we can do that is by our reasoning. Like they always give the example of, if you're familiar with fire and you know that it makes smoke, then when you look across the valley and you see smoke, you don't have to see the fire to know there's smoke there, because you can infer it. You can figure that out by reasoning. But this kind of inference is different because a lot of the things, the validity of a lot of the teachings that are obscure to us, we have to rely on a kind of inference that's based on the scriptures. But one thing that's I think is quite important to realize in the way the Buddhists, their understanding of their theory of knowledge, you might say, all of our inferences eventually go back to direct experience. So that's what this is pointing to here. We first start with our direct, immediate, our own experience of the teachings, and then we build upon that. So that's, for me, one thing that when I heard that, I just learned this last winter actually. I never understood that connection, that the inferences that we make eventually go back to a direct experience. I find that to be quite a powerful notion because of this kind of teaching, we can't just, to have a reasoned faith, we have to have some level of confidence in it. And to have a really true confidence, isn't it easier just to see something for yourself? We do have this kind of third level of, this level of inference for things. Maybe we don't have the one based on scriptures, but For things that are very, very obscure, we actually have some confidence in things that are very obscure based on reliable sources telling us. So, for example, do all of you know your birth date? Do you remember being born? So you don't have a direct experience of it, and you actually can't really reason it out. Like, I know what my birth date is, but through reasoning, I can't figure it out. I can't, like, let's see, how old am I? I can kind of make a ballpark, but the actual day, the actual time, how do you know that? It's a very obscure thing to you, but it's not very obscure to the person who held, who held you in the womb and delivered you. So you trust your parents who told you when you were born. So that's a very obscure phenomena that you have confidence in. This is the example that they always give when they talk about having confidence, this kind of inference that we have based on an authoritative, reliable. In this case, we're talking about the scriptures. So this is how we can work our way back from our own direct experience through our teachers, through the commentaries to the word of the Buddha.